Hello and welcome to News Express, exclusively brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. I am Chukwunonso Modi. Now let's take a look at the stories taking the front page this week. Now the big story we have, poverty spread, inflation exposes, and out of that, government. Now another big headline says Africa's e-commerce on song to reach $46.1 billion revenue by 2025. Sub-headlines, the market rewards $33.3 billion in 2022. Yearly income to increase by 500 in 7 years. And opportunity beckons for Nigeria with 409.2 million MAUs, 48.12% mobile penetration. Now, definitely, you should look out for news with Africans face Africa's challenges. Also, look out for companies and business, which says UK Sevian taps Nigeria fintech. Check out Visionary Voices. We can end neglected tropical diseases and what the world can learn from Nordic gods under Executive Knowledge Series. Now let's bring in Philip Isakma, the publisher of Business AM, to help us make sense of the headlines. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Onso. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you too?
I'm good.
All right, so let's get straight to it. Now, the first headline says poverty spreads as inflation exposes and out of debt government. Now, the latest CPI report from the National Bureau of Statistics, as NBS, show that Nigeria's inflation rate climbed for the fourth consecutive month to 17.7% in May 2022 from 16.82%, while the headline inflation rose 0.02% month on month to 1.78%. Now, Mr. Philip, the Nigerian economy in recent times has, been shaken under this inflationary pressure. And now, as if that's not enough, we have been dealt with yet another blow. What's going on, Mr. Philip?
There's quite a lot that is going on, especially with regards to inflation. We've been following this, we've been tracking this for quite some time, and we've seen a resurgence in the level at which inflation has been rising. But much more than that. It's if of course you can have the numbers put in front of you. You can look at it in terms of how much they've been climbing over some time. Then you can look at the extent to which they are rising with regards to being month on month, and so we talk about a straight 4-month rise. Then you then come to an 11-month high of 17.7%. But much more than the numbers is actually the impact, because you could have the numbers put in front of you without having to understand what this means, out there on the streets. So we've tried to, what the story has tried to do is to really dig into what this really means, because the World Bank came the other day and talked about a growing number of people that are likely to fall into the poverty trap, at the end of this year. And of course, they've talked about Nigeria being the poverty capital of the world, from I think since last year or so, and that's been a devastating tag to have, across wherever you are in the world, being a Nigerian, but it's how inflation, has spread, spread poverty, all across the country. Again, you just have to go back to what happened over the weekend in the elections in Ekiti State,
Yes.
where we were looking at having a change in terms of vote buying, and we saw a number of clips, that came out, that suggested that vote buying was still on. You can attribute all of that to the widespread of poverty, people in villages, in rural areas, who have no access to quite a lot of things, and politicians in the city centers not caring about what's going on in the rural areas. You have poverty in city centers across the country, and you can imagine what's going on in villages where they have no access to quite a lot of things. But the key thing is that inflation is really hitting very hard on the people, and it cuts across quite a lot of things. Food inflation, which comprises over 50% of inflation rate, rose to 19.5%. It's higher in the highest in 8 months. That's quite a lot, especially because you see the composition of the basket that makes up inflation calculation. It has 50% food component, and if that is really what's going on, then it's not just poverty you're talking about. You can be talking about hunger, that is spreading all over the place, and people the officials are not addressing this. They are not looking at how this is really impacting. You've had people talk about food, prices of things going up week on week.
Yes,
people go to the market this week, they find that it has gone up by 100%. They go the next week, it has gone up by 100%, and things price keep rising. And many people have poo-pooed these figures that come out from the Bureau of Statistics, saying that it's not actually reflecting the deeper pangs that inflation is having. People have suggested, analysts have suggested that in real terms, you could be talking about inflation at 21, even up to 30%. If you were to really do the calculations very well, because people are seeing prices jump sometimes daily, but definitely weekly and every month, and that this is really devastating, for the population. So you have food, you have other items, luxuries out of the way. People are trying to eke a living, trying to make sure that they keep they survive, this onslaught. But broadly speaking, you could be looking at what's all this about. So when we say it exposes an out of debt, the government out of its debt, its debt, you'll be looking at the fact that there's a global problem, of course. Crisis happening in Ukraine, and the war going on in Ukraine, affecting prices of a lot of things. But you can also look at the domestic angle to it in terms of the management of the management of the economy, in terms of how these managers have really almost like messed up everything. Whereas there can be excuse that this is also happening all over the place. That it's not only Nigeria. Of course, inflation is a global issue. We talked about it, I think, a week or two ago. When we said when the central bank, when we looked at the central bank intervening with regards to monetary policy rates, and we said yes, and we said that if inflation is causing central banks across the globe to respond, that we expected the Central Bank of Nigeria to respond, and they did respond, responded much more than we had made the call, So whereas you have the global problems happening, so many things happening across the world, Ukraine crisis, COVID, that has seen China lock itself up again, and then global supply chains still has a problem, but there is a sense in which we think that domestic management of the economy hasn't been top notch, and the point is that the World Bank has come up to say, it's not just fiscal side now. Both monetary policy handling hasn't been particularly smooth, So you look at the two pillars of more or less of government managing the economy, with the monetary side and the fiscal side, and there has been a damning condemnation of the two sides, the way they have handled things. Exchange rates haven't been handled very well, and that's causing quite a lot of things, especially because the intervention that has been going on with regards to the exchange rate policy management, hasn't particularly brought any, hasn't helped, so many things, that are in the mix, but the key thing is that it is spreading poverty. You have a population of over 200 million people. Over 70% of that population is in some form of crisis or the other with regards to what is going on in the economy. And then the fact that poverty is spreading, I mean, again, it's attested to by what happened over the weekend. We've said that, people getting bribed with 5,000 naira.
I saw the videos. They were selling their PVCs for, oh my God, it's terrible.
You can imagine, but that's what poverty does, Poverty creates a lot of anxiety in people, because you look at where the next meal will come from, and if you want to survive, you got to find something to put in your stomach, and so it doesn't matter what amount you are given, and people are, again, we look at this and say, oh well, that is selling another 4 years, you're going to pay for this, one way or the other, it probably will last another 4 years or so, but the key thing is that it's a devastating thing happening. The economy is on a precarious state. And it's amazing how people are surviving. How we are surviving in a state like this, especially because there isn't you're not hearing particular response, to this. In some countries they are responding. Probably Nigeria is not as rich as those countries, in terms of what it can use to respond. But when it has responded more or less in ways that haven't helped, because there has been a lot of interventions. Those interventions, you cannot really tell how positive they have been or where they have really made the impact. So this is what is concerning. Because so many things are in the mix, and it's really affecting a lot of people.
It is. It's really affecting because this rise in inflation, its impact on the Nigerian economy is compounded by so much, like you said. And as I recall, last week we spoke on this, we even spoke on food inflation and how prices are increasing. Like you rightfully said, you go to the market today, you buy something for 500, and sometimes it doesn't even go to the next week. You maybe 2 days later is a whole 1,000, and you're asking how? Where did we go wrong? How did we get here? But I agree. I know I mentioned last week that most people will say that this food inflation was because of the war in Ukraine and we having to import, and now we can't. But then it has been there since. It's not just internationally. We also need to do something domestically as well. Now, speaking on solutions, the World Bank provided, it gave some solutions. I know we have been giving solutions to these issues. We have been talking about them weeks and weeks now. But then they have given some priority policy. Now, what are the solutions that can, help us cope with inflationary pressures?
The World Bank presenting its what you call Nigerian development update recently, was very, 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 very upfront, about how this is going to cause a lot of problem, within the economy, especially how it's going to affect Nigerians. They talk about 1 million people, and then
that's a lot.
That's a lot. And when you add this up, you are looking about. They say when you add up to I think 6 million that has been estimated. So you're having another 1 million to that. So 7 million people, being driven into poverty. But the key thing is that when these things come out, you expect some kind of reactions, positive reactions from policy makers. They don't do that.
They don't.
They rather fight. Fight the the story that is coming out, or the news, or the information that is being given, and try to justify whatever they think they're doing. But the key thing is that we have a government that said it was going to lift how many 100 million people in the next how many years out of poverty, and then I think they said 100 million in 10 years or so. So you expect 10 million to be lifted out of poverty every year, but here we are, we are talking about the opposite of it. So we're talking about 7 million likely to go into poverty, which means was it negative 17 million then? Because if you weren't able to achieve your what's it called, your 10 million, that means that's a negative 0% for you, and then you then have 7 million that are going into poverty, so that's a serious problem. So the IMF is saying, inflationary pressure is a major challenge for the economy, so it says for Nigeria to effectively curb the ripple effect of rising inflation on the Nigerian economy and consequently the populace, it's recommended that adopting a single market responsive exchange rate. So that's always been a major problem. We've talked about exchange rate being a challenge. We've had the Naira plummeting, as if it's falling from a hill, Mount Everest at the top, and then without any rope to hold on to, so it's been dropping as if it's like a pack of cards, So what you have, the exchange rate is doing, at least in the open market, in the street, is 600 or even 600 plus, to the Naira, and that's a major aspect of the economy, because you see, exchange rate, some economists who have propounded the theory that if your exchange rate is high, if your exchange rate against other currencies is low, then you are likely to have what's it called? They say the positive side of it is that people will buy your goods, but that's when you have goods to sell, Nigeria is not a product; it doesn't produce anything, that the world actually needs. It's our crude oil, we're not producing the commodities that we're supposed to produce, other commodities that we're supposed to produce, in such a number, to really effectively play on the world stage. We are not doing that, So you have this is how the exchange rate actually gets plays a major part, So because there's distortion in that in the exchange rate regime, because you have many points of exchange where you have you used to have so you have about three points, so you don't there's a what's called a misunderstanding of what exactly is ruling the market. So you have the streets where the exchange rate is 600, and then you have another market where the exchange is probably 400 plus or whatever, and then the confusion is so huge that you have what they call arbitrage, going on, that distorts the market. It creates a lot of confusion for managing the economy for what's called players in the economy who rely on what exchange rate to do their business, import raw materials or import so many other things. So this distortion is one thing. They say so they want it. They've been singing this song for a long time, that a single market responsive exchange rate should be applied. And then they've talked about a full reopening of borders and also to trade and strengthening regional cooperation, to combat smuggling. So smuggling is seen as one thing that is going on and probably distorting the system, So they talk about, of course, we have removing imports and FX restriction on staple foods. You could look at all of this, so many things that have been recorded, reducing. Again, that is one aspect of it, that CBN subsidizes lending to medium and large firms, they are recommending that this should be stopped and instead expanding the scope for commercial banks to lend at a risk-adjusted rate, then curb inflation hike through complementary measures such as eliminating trade and FX restriction, and so many things that they've recommended, for addressing this challenge. But the key thing is that inflation is spreading poverty right now, and it's so painful to see that poverty is leading people to make wrong decisions, especially with casting votes,
Yes.
and which means same old, because you're going to find yourself that you have made a decision not based on rational thinking, but based on what you call your stomach for the moment, and once that moment is gone, you're back to the real problem you were facing at the beginning.
Exactly. Honestly, I really hope that this words from the World Bank, the solutions that you've also preferred, will not just fall by the roadside, but they will germinate and take fruit. But then even with that, it's just hope, because now that the elections are on, they're still focused on that and doing everything to make sure they get back in. So let's just see how it goes, basically. All right. The second headline says Africa's e-commerce on song to reach $46.1 billion revenue by 2025. Now, Africa's economy will receive additional $46.1 billion over the next 3 years to 2025 as smartphones and internet technologies become increasingly accessible on the continent. This according to numbers presented in a new research report. Now, Mr. Philip, this has shown that the e-commerce market, has become really lucrative in the continent. In fact, the report stated that the population has started to shift towards online shopping.
Absolutely. If you take a cue from the world stage globally, this is what COVID. Positive thing that perhaps you want to say COVID brought to the world. The world. So e-commerce is now the go-to place for shopping. Maybe just to say something, put an aside, is that perhaps some form of laziness, stay on your couch and get on your tabs and then get what you want anyway. But that's what this has become, especially the African market. Now, Africa, what happens with growth largely is that when growth is at a base level, when it begins to climb, it climbs so fast, that the numbers become very huge, So one way to look at it is that this is a positive story, because while we're talking about inflation hitting everybody, and creating poverty, we're seeing that activities are going on, as a result of technology, that has come in, and is expanding the e-commerce space for everybody, and quite a good amount of money you're talking about, especially if these projections come to pass, because they're talking about 46.1 billion US dollars in revenue, and that's quite a lot of money. They say in 2022 the market will be worth this year we are in, will be worth 3.3 billion. And then you have yearly income to increase by 500 in 7 year. Opportunity beckons, especially for Nigeria, especially because of the population, and especially because mobile penetration is quite high, 48.12%, that is stated there. But the key thing is that e-commerce is growing, quite a lot of, the investments that we've seen come into the tech space, have also helped. Many startups, so many things have gone in the e-commerce space with investment coming from different parts of the world. Have helped. To not just in the payment especially not just in the payment gateway, that have been created, but also in establishing the what's it called, the e-commerce shops, where people can go to, to make their orders. So quite a positive story. We're hoping that this will come into fruition, over time. With the projections that have been given, 33.3 billion this year, growing at 19%, and 2023 you have another 14.7% growth, to take it to 38.2 billion, and the year after in 2024, it's the percentage growth would drop slightly to 11%, but it's still going to give you 42.3 billion in revenues, and then in 2025, it then reaches 46.1 billion naira. But the key thing is that all of this is wrapped up in the smartphone revolution, in the tech space revolution, because Africa is still a virgin market, So when you have saturation in different parts of the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Europe, in North America, and in Asia, where you have saturation, you look at virgin markets. I think we've discussed one story, this in the past, where people talked about the next frontier for growth with regards to technology, with regards to to smartphone activities, So because it's always been virgin land, virgin space, as more investments come in, as different applications are developed, you have this, creating this expansion. You have population. Population is on the. You have population being positive for Africa, for this kind of growth, So many things are working together, to make this possible for Africa, and Nigeria will have to position itself. Of course, there are so many things. That already happening in Nigeria with regards to that space. So many e-commerce space, participants or new entrants into that space, happening, and because of that, we have the largest smartphone in terms of weather numbers, in terms of the appliances itself, and then the penetration, so it's a space, that people, and because they talk about these projections, these revenue projections, it creates a window for people to see the opportunities and then go into it. Estimations will have been based on what is already on ground right now, but these projections can easily be doubled, if people see the opportunities and begin to, and also want to tap into it and come in full time.
I agree with you. It's something that if we do it the right way, we can, get a whole lot. And hopefully, as this report has stated, we are doing well. Nigeria has already, started tapping into this opportunity, but there is a lot more. And of course, there's room for significant growth. But let's see how it goes. And we hope that this projections will actually bear fruit.
They're likely to bear fruit.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Philip. We'll see how the stories develop this week.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great week, Nancy.
You too. That was Philip Isakwa, the publisher of Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. Don't forget, you can also listen in again by going to www.africabusinessradio.com and clicking on the News Express podcast. That's all for now. Stay tuned for more.